Shalom, brothers and sisters who are scattered in all corners of the earth. Sanibonani, my name is Mpumelelo. Welcome to this channel. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of you who are subscribers to this channel. I'd like to thank you for your contributions, thank you for your love, and thank you for your support. To those who have not subscribed, please consider to do so. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, like this video, and share it with friends and family. So what are we looking at today? Let's start by reviewing what we talked about last time in the last video. The last video we looked at whether or not the Tanakh was written for the children or to the children of Israel, the house of Jacob. Now we established that the entire Tanakh, from at least the 12th chapter of Genesis to the last chapter, to the last book of the Tanakh, the Chronicles, it's about the history, how the family of Jacob became the chosen children of the Almighty, how other families of the earth were left out, not because the Almighty wanted to exclude other people, but they excluded themselves. Just as the children of Israel, as time went, they excluded themselves. They walked away from the Almighty. We walked away from the Almighty. And as a result of that, we found ourselves where we are, in captivity. But fortunately for us, the Almighty cannot lie. He made a covenant with our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And with that covenant, he bound himself forever that he will restore us to the promised land no matter what. But not all of us will make it to the promised land, because others, some of us, continue to be disobedient, continue to do what the Gentiles are doing, continue to follow after the Gentiles. Today we are looking at the New Testament. Is it divinely inspired by the Almighty? What do we mean when we say something is divinely inspired by the Almighty? If you look at all the books of the Tanakh, from the beginning, you hear the voice of the Almighty speaking to the author in particular. His messenger. The author is telling the children of Israel about what the Almighty wants us to hear. So there's dialogue between the author and the Almighty. If there's no dialogue, the author receives a vision from the Almighty, and the writer or the messenger communicates that vision to the people. When we get to the New Testament, we find a new story. The New Testament, there's no connection between the New Testament and the word of the Almighty. No one in the New Testament can claim that what they have written came from the Almighty. None of what they have written, none of the writers claims in writing that this was spoken by the Almighty. Thus says the Almighty, or I got this vision from the Almighty. Now, confused people would say that Paul got the vision from Yeshua, but Yeshua is not the Almighty. That narrative was created about 400 years later, that the Almighty is equal to Yeshua, which is blasphemous. It is idolatry. You cannot say that with your mouth. I'm saying this because I'm trying to illustrate to our people that the pagans have infused their pagan beliefs and corrupted our beliefs. There are some of us who insist on this New Testament. Some of us are saying, okay, we are not Christians. We're not going to church. But Messiah is our Messiah. And they're even saying, okay, he's white. The one that is portrayed in the New Testament is white. Ours is. It doesn't matter what the complexion of this person is. He's not the Messiah. He's not prophesied. He's not the prophesied Messiah. But we will get there. Right now, we want to establish whether the New Testament was inspired by the Almighty. So far, I said to you, all the books in the Tanakh, they tell you that they are inspired by the Almighty. The writer says, thus says the Almighty. So this is the word of the Almighty spoken by the messenger of the Almighty. Come to the New Testament. Oh, before I forget something, all books of the New Testament, with the exception of Genesis and Exodus, a few chapters in Exodus, 2 chapters in Exodus, they are not contemporary to the events. So the writer writes about an event that has already occurred thousands of years ago. The whole book of Genesis is about events that took place a long time ago. Moses was not born when Adam and Eve were born, or when Adam and Eve were created, when they sinned, when they departed from the Garden of Eden, when other righteous men and wicked men were born on earth. Moses was not there. But because there was continuity in the posterity of Adam, the men and women who lived after Adam were able to capture the events that took place from the Garden of Eden, at least to the floods. And after the floods, we have also a continuity of the writings. It's fascinating because when I first read the Bible, I never thought that people who lived during that time could write. But here we are. We find ancient writings. Our people were able to write. There was no problem at all. So, most of the Tanakh is written by prophets. And the prophets have written quite extensively. And the prophets had an interaction. Something is irritating my throat. The prophets interacted extensively with the Almighty, and we can hear his words being spoken as we read. So even if you read the Psalms, even if you read the Proverbs, it's the wisdom that was given to those people that is written, and it comes out as you read. Now, the reason why we have more than prophets, more than one prophet, and some of the prophets lived at the same time, so they were contemporaries. Isaiah, Jeremiah, they lived at the same time, so they prophesied at the same time. They are contemporaries. They serve the same kings. Now, the reason why the Almighty did that, it confirms what is said in the Torah, that the testimony of one person is not enough. It needs to be supported by the testimonies of others. That is why we have the prophets in their writings. Their writings corresponds or agrees with one another. And most of their writings, if not all of them, they are contemporary. So it means they are writing at the same time when the events are taking place. You don't find a writing that occurs 50 years after an event that had taken place. But the writer experienced, is the eyewitness. The writer, when you talk about Isaiah, when he spoke to the kings, it was him who spoke to the king, it was him who wrote. He lived, and it is him who's writing at the time when that king was alive. Let's come to the New Testament. The New Testament is written about 30 years to 70 years, between 30 years to 70 years after Yeshua died. So none of the people who lived with him during his time, none of them wrote. Those who wrote, their writings were discarded from the canonical books. I indicated last week that Philip wrote. He was the disciple. We're told he was the disciple. Thomas, incidentally, I didn't mention this last week. Thomas is known as a twin. Guess whose twin brother is? Guess whose twin brother is Thomas? Thomas was known to be the twin brother of Yeshua. In the books, in the early manuscripts, Thomas is known as the twin and the twin brother of Yeshua. That is why they kicked it out. They don't want you to know that Thomas is actually the twin brother of Yeshua. So, because once they had written that, it tells you something. This man is not divine. This man is not divine. He had a twin brother. Well, but let's not labor on that, because the writings of Thomas were taken out. It's immaterial. But Philip wrote, Thomas wrote, Mary Magdalene wrote, Judas Iscariot wrote, even Peter wrote. But all these are contemporaries of Yeshua. They lived with him, they are eyewitnesses, but their writings were taken out. They are not part of the canonical books. Strangely enough, other people, 30 to 70 years, the book of John is written 70 years after Yeshua died. Now you see, my father died 30 years ago. If I were to write his biography now, if I start now and write his biography, I'm not going to get much. Writers know this. If you want to write something about someone, you need to write about it when the thing is happening. When this person is alive, is in existence. You write about it 30 years after, you're going to miss out on a lot of things. And it means you need to interview people who lived with that person during that time. And this is exactly what happened with the Gospels. They were interviewing people, they got materials from people, and they got distorted information. And they were copying from each other, because remember, there was no copying machine and there was no printing press. There was no typewriter. People were writing by hand. Now, if you ask me whether the Tanakh was written the same way, yes. But there was a deliberate intention to ensure that the scribes, firstly, were people of good standing in the society, and secondly, their writings were scrutinized to make sure that the copy reflects the original. That is why when they found the Dead Sea Scrolls and compared them with the writings of the Hebrew scriptures, they match word for word. It's amazing. It's not the same thing with the New Testament. They found 40,000 manuscripts. Of the 40,000 manuscripts, 5,000 of them were written in Greek. The 35,000 were written in various other languages, and each of them have their own mistakes. You can imagine, if I can write the book of Matthew today, you know this experience. Our teachers before the age of computers used to write on the board. They would give us notes and we will copy. And you are writing something that is written on the board. You will make mistakes as you are writing because you are writing fast. And then a friend of yours phones and say, I didn't go to school today. Can you give me your notes? They will take your notes and make their own mistakes. Now imagine 40,000 copies. They were mistakes. But besides those mistakes, some people say they were not serious mistakes, they were spelling errors. But in other instances, you miss a paragraph, you miss a page. And those who consolidated all those manuscripts, they added their narrative because they already had a doctrine in mind that they wanted to sell to people. Now it is incredible that the book of John is written 70 years after Jesus died, after Yeshua. People get offended when I say Jesus. After Yeshua died, 70 years after he died. Now, if you write something 70 years after the person died, is it accurate? Accurate. So, what do you think about all these things? The dates and the narratives. In the following videos, we will begin to look at all the verses that are quoted in the New Testament. Do they correspond with the verses that are quoted in the Tanakh? Do they go along with the narrative of the Tanakh, or is it cut and paste? According to the Torah, the witness of one person is not sufficient. That is why in the Tanakh, there's agreement between the prophecies. So prophecies agrees with one another, but they also agrees with the prophecies of Deuteronomy and on the Torah. So there's alignment of thought from the beginning of the book of the Torah to the end of the Tanakh. We will look at whether there's an agreement between the gospel writers. Can we trust their writings, do they correspond with what the Torah says? The witness of one person is insufficient to be believed. Does it correspond with the other Gospels, with the other writings of the New Testament, and does it match with the writings of the Tanakh? We will look at all those things, and afterwards, I'll never talk about this thing again. It will be up to individuals who watch this channel, whether you decide to follow other channels that talks about the things you want to hear, or whether you will on your own begin to read and find information. Because what I'm saying is information. It is up to you to make a follow-up and make sure that you are in right or good standing with the Almighty. As I said, we're on different paths, but this path needs to come together at some point. It is up to us to encourage each other and work together. And I've seen in the comments, some would pick up on something that is said by someone and comment. It is encouraging. It means we are working together. We are learning together. We are moving forward together. It is inspiring. It is encouraging. Let's continue to do that. Thank you very much for your attention. Until next time, ngiyabonga, asante sana.